really geared to try to encourage people, to help people take responsibility for themselves. In a legal way, I might add. So, with that said, I want to go back to how I try to do that. Financial literacy, financial education, handling your money is what I'm really about. But in my perseverance quotes, which is on the website, I explained that even though this is a financial education program, it's only about 25% dealing with money, but it's really about 75% dealing with persevering, not quitting, not giving up, surrounding yourself with the right people, and making good decisions. What the premise of my whole program is that if a person is under financial stress, you or me or anyone, they're apt to make bad decisions. And so what I try to do is teach an overall awareness about how money works in your life so that you can learn to think and plan ahead so that you can get on top of your money so that it's something that you can control so that when life's unexpected things come at you, you'll be better equipped to deal with those things and not let something that should have been no more than a temporary setback turn into a major failure. So that's pretty much what my approach to how I handle financial education. I want to tell you that when you're on top of your money, you can reach goals easier. When you're not on top of your money, you can't reach goals very easily. At an Achievable Dream Academy in Newport News, a public high school that I teach a couple days a week, financial literacy to 14, 15-year-olds. The first day when I go into class, I give them what I call a topic paper, and it's on budget, cash flow, loans, and credit cards. Now, these are 4 topics that I believe that as we go into being responsible for ourselves, learning how to be self-sufficient, these are 4 things that we ought to know a lot about. And my thinking is, if you know how to budget, you understand cash flow, you understand what credit cards are all about, and what loans are all about, that you should have a pretty good chance to handle your finances in a good way. And I asked 8 questions on there the first day of class just so that I can see what the students know me coming in. And then those are the objectives that I teach to for that year. And I want to tell you what those 8 questions are. So let me do this slow in case you want to write them down. If you don't have time to write them down because you're commuting right now or you're in a car, go to my website, register, let me know that you want more information, and I'll furnish you with what I'm talking about today. The first question that I talk about, what does the term reconcile mean in regard to a checking account with a bank? I stay on that question after I get the results the next class that I come back. The word reconcile does not necessarily have to do only with money. The word reconcile basically means to check something for its accuracy, to make sure that something is correct. If you reconcile things in your life, it could get things right. You can reconcile relationships. You can reconcile your bank account. There's many things that you can reconcile. So that's the first word I get into is reconciling in regard to a bank account. The next question is, when borrowing money, what three variables determine how much the monthly payment will be for a loan? Now, I'm going to stop just for a second. I imagine that most everybody listening to my show does not want to be in a financial education class, but at the same time, everybody that's listening to my show hopefully wants to be more successful with the way that you handle your finances. So I'm doing the very best I can to try to not be too much like a teacher that's boring, that you don't really want to pay attention. But at the same time, I'm preparing you for some tools that I want to pass on to you that I give you an absolute guarantee. If I was with you face to face right now, I will look in your eye and say, there's not many people in life that will look directly square in your eye and give you a flat out guarantee that what they're telling you will be making your life better. But I absolutely can guarantee you that. The three things about a loan that what determines the payment, these high school kids, none of them knew. None of them knew. There wasn't one kid in that 32 kids in that class that could answer those three things. Well, I'll just give you the answer really quick here. You don't have to take a test with me. How much did you borrow, called the principal? What's the rate that you're borrowing, the interest rate? And how long will you take to pay that off? So those are the three things that will determine your payment. And then I went right into a follow-up on that. What is an amortization table? And a lot of people that don't know a whole lot about sophisticated ways to handle money, if you go to a bank and borrow a loan for a car, they're going to calculate how many months you're going to pay it, what your monthly payment's going to be, and the way they do that is called an amortization table. And so that's just something that is helpful to know as an adult. When borrowing money, what is an APR? Annual percentage rate. So I'm just trying to take people into the fact here that it costs money when you borrow money. What is a consolidation loan? I want to tell you this right now. A consolidation loan is one of the single most important things that when you find yourself in bad finances, when you have all sorts of bills that you're trying to pay on and you're not paying them on time and your credit's getting worse and worse, a consolidation loan is one of the best vehicles that you can have at your disposal to help get your finances straight. But I will tell you right now, I will talk for an hour to 2 hours on just that one point about a consolidation loan. And I'll tell you that one day we're going to do that, but the logical question that always comes up is, well, what if you don't have credit and can't get a consolidation loan? And I'll tell you right now that the best way that you can get a consolidation loan if you don't have credit is to have someone else believe in you that is willing to sign their name on the loan that will put their name at risk. When someone signs the consolidation loan, if you're late on a payment, it affects their credit exactly the same way it affects yours. So if someone is going to take the risk of believing in you and signing that note with you, then you don't want to let them down. And it's a beautiful way, though, if somebody truly does believe in you, for you to get your credit rebuilt, and we're going to go into great detail on that one day. How are credit card finances charges calculated? That's another one of the questions. Because my main point here is I want people to understand what the credit card trap is all about and how when you only pay a minimum payment and you run up your balance and you get to where you have a limit on your credit card and you're just paying a minimum balance, that you are now under bondage. And that I'll just give you a quick statistic. A friend of mine named Chuck Payne, who was a military officer and counseled a lot of his men, he had to teach his men this. And he showed me that if you only make a minimum payment at a 24% interest rate, it'll take you 15 years to pay off the last penny of a credit card. So I just want you to think about this. If you freely use a credit card for things that you can't afford, and sometimes you have to. Sometimes there's an emergency and you have to use your credit. That's what the real purpose of a credit card is. If if you have to use one. It's there for emergencies. If you use it correctly, it can be a good tool, but it's there in case of an emergency is the best thing you can use a credit card for. But just remember that I told you, and I can show it to you on paper, that if you make a purchase and you pay a 24% interest rate, effectively 2% a month, and you only make a minimum payment, it will take you 15 years to not have that purchase that you made sometime in the past not still be coming out of your income that you're using to spend. And the next thing is, what is a budget? Well, a budget is very, very straightforward to understand. It's when you take the money that you have coming in and you take all the obligations, expenses, and things that you need money for, and you put them down on paper so that you can take a look at what it is. Most people, when they do a budget, they do what we call a monthly budget. That's what was in the course that I was asked to teach, Ready to Work. The 40 pages shows a budget, and it's on a piece of paper, and it shows what your month looks like. Well, I got to tell you this. About 10 years ago, my wife's son, he came over to talk about his finances, and he made the comment when we were encouraging to try to put his budget down on paper. He wasn't doing it on paper, and he finally just got upset and says, "Ma, I get it, but I don't have enough money to do a budget." Well, let me say this. When you don't have enough money to do a budget, there is no better time than to take the time to do a budget on paper. But here's the problem. Most everybody that ever does a budget that's having great financial difficulty, stress in their life because of finances, when they get it down on paper, here's what I tell them. Make sure that you put a line item on your budget for a lot of paper towels. This is my favorite line that I use across the board when I'm teaching budget. Make sure that you put a line item, an amount on your budget for what you're going to have to spend for a lot of paper towels. And the reason that I encourage people to put a lot of paper towels, an amount for paper towels in their budget, is because when you see your budget on paper for the first time, if you haven't been doing a budget on paper, it's going to make you probably throw up. And then you're going to have to clean it up. So that's my comment on why the first time you ever do a budget, it's kind of like any other program. You've got to come out of denial so that you can accept what you got to do and then give yourself a plan and then move forward. And so that's what budgeting is all about. But the problem with doing a monthly budget, and that's what I wanted to introduce you to today, is the concept of cash flow. I'm going to teach you today, or at least I'm going to start explaining to you what it is, and hopefully you'll want to pursue it further. And by the way, the internet is an incredible tool. Most everybody that's listening to the show probably has access to an internet. And if you Google cash flow, you can learn a lot about what it is. And if you go to a website that I use extensively called eHow, little e like e-commerce, capital H-O-W, and then put in eHow to learn about cash flow or do a cash flow budget, you'll probably get a lot of information. So self-educate yourself is a good way to do things. Okay, cash flow is really simple. Cash flow is understanding the flow of your cash. That's rocket science, cash flow. It's the in and out of your money into your life, how your money comes in and how your money goes out. And if you learn to pay attention and keep track of how money comes in and goes out, and you stay on top of it, and you look at it for 6 months in advance, maybe a year in advance or whatever, you will find that you become much, much more disciplined and don't spend so much money on things that you didn't realize you didn't have the money to spend. Let me let that sink in for a second here. What I'm talking about